Hey everybody, I don't usually upload videos, you know, back to back like this. I usually give my time a little bit of time to marinate, but I had this video pretty much almost done. Um, so I just went ahead and finished it and put it out there. And there's not much of an intro for this video. It's just three creepypasta internet stories about places that shouldn't exist. And yeah, same formula as usual. I hope you guys enjoy it. Have you ever taken a shortcut or scenic route to a destination and stumble across an out of the way town or location you swear you've never seen before? It might be your first time seeing said area, and maybe it even has a very enticing atmosphere or a good place to grab a bite to eat. Now imagine you take a friend or significant other to look at the new discovery, only for the place you swear you passed through a few days ago to have seemingly disappeared, with no trace of the small community to be found. What happened? Was the new area you found swallowed up by the earth, or was it never there? Maybe you went the wrong way or took a wrong turn, but you memorized the path. It wasn't hard to get there in the first place. Every answer leads to more questions. As outlandish as it seems, real life disappearances of settlements or towns, or folklore surrounding urban legends of areas that don't seem to exist, isn't uncommon. An example, Langville, a small rural town in Montana, was said to once exist, only for it to vanish overnight at some point in the late 90s or early 2000s. Many reason it's just people misremembering the area, others say it's a Mandela effect. But there's a majority of Montana residents that are adamant that it was once real. Even in my home state of Texas lie many rumors and legends of places that once existed. Some real examples are Jericho, Glen Rio, and Texola. I'd be here all day if I tried to name all 500 plus of these ghost towns, and even longer if I try to explain what happened to them. But the three towns that I mentioned earlier seemingly disappeared due to economic downfall, despite their importance to the famous Route 66. An example coming out of Japan is Inunaki Village, a fictitious village that was made famous by an internet urban legend back in 1999, which describes a place in Japan that one must seek out by taking the real life tunnel, Inunaki Tunnel. Once you make it to the other end, there will be a village, and on the entrance to the village will be a sign that reads, "The Japanese Constitution is not in effect past here." In the story, a couple is killed by a sickle-wielding man when they unexpectedly enter the lawless village. Despite its made-up origins, the tunnel mentioned in the story does really exist and has been the site of many murders. It was eventually sealed on both ends sometime in the 2000s, preventing people from venturing inside of it. The story has gone on to inspire many works, including a movie, a game, and even a manga by Junji Ito. These areas that I just talked about are all examples of how real life locations can be abandoned and emptied over the years or seemingly have no trace to their existence. This leaves people wondering if these places actually existed, but luckily, the benefit of the internet and local hearsays will keep the memories and myths of these places alive. In reality, the catalyst for many of these ghost towns are simple: economic hardship, natural disaster, or even modernization and urbanization, or even the seemingly vanished or fictitious towns have a kernel of reality to them. But what if there was a town in the middle of nowhere that only a few people even remember? A town with people, a town with buildings, a town with life that just fell off the face of the earth. Literally, it was there one day and gone the next, as if the wind blew up the people and the buildings away with it. Or a place that one has to really search for, that's not marked on any maps known to man, a place only talked about in myth. As there's a running theme on the channel, I'm going to use the median of creepypastas to get my point across. Much like my previous video about The Ghost in the Machine, creepypastas love the topic of places that seemingly don't exist, or areas that, in one way or another, are hidden away. So, here are 3 of those stories. I think that no matter where you live, there will always be some sort of urban legend of a town or location that people swear existed and somehow managed to disappear. Whether it be a single building or even like a whole town. Maybe they're right. Maybe there was something there before and it just vanished. But how? It's not like the ground can open up and swallow it. Unless it did. The story of Ashley, Kansas goes into that exact concept. A town that was once there and then it's gone. But not in the sense that it just vanished. More like it was raptured, but in the worst way possible. I don't usually read the stories as a whole just to save on time, but I feel a summarized retelling of the story will help convey how cosmic the disappearance of this town really was. On August 16th, 1952, Ashley, Kansas vanished, leaving only a smoking fissure where it once was. On August 30th, an earthquake shook the surrounding area, which its center was later to be determined Ashley, and once investigated, the fissure that was once there was now closed. 8 days before the disappearance of the town, multiple residents called in to the nearby town of Hayes to report unnatural occurrences. The first of these unexplainable events was that of a small black opening in the sky. Not even 15 minutes later, dozens more of the residents called in to explain they were seeing the same thing. No other community next to Ashley saw anything of the sort. The next day, the nearby town of Hayes sent some of its police to investigate, only for them to drive back to Hayes, seemingly in a circle, Ashley never appearing on the route they would usually take to get to it. Despite the fact the town was seemingly gone, calls were still being made to the Hayes Police Department from Ashley, saying that the black hole had grown since the day before. The next day, more of the residents called in to say the sun had not risen and that they were in complete darkness. In order to confirm, a helicopter was dispatched from Topeka to investigate the region. Again, the town was never seen, despite flying right over where it should have been. As the next day came, more than 300 calls were made to the Hayes Police Department, describing how all the town's children began to talk, with deceased relatives beckoning to them to come outside into the darkness. The following morning, all 200 plus of the town's children were reported missing. On August 13th, a resident called into the Hayes Police to report a large, far-off fire beginning to emerge and move towards them, lighting up the darkness that once engulfed the town. Many residents called in to say they saw the same thing, although no fire was observed where the town should have been. The last call ever made from Ashley, Kansas, was from a woman describing how all the missing children and the deceased of the town had emerged from the fire, and how many residents opened their doors to let in their loved ones, only for the home to catch fire and collapse. The call ends with the woman's son finding his way into the house and presumably killing her. So, I revisited this story for the sole purpose of this video, and I remember listening to this creepypasta a really long time ago, and it was a creepypasta that kind of sprung the idea for this video because it's very ominous. There's really a sense of some sort of cosmic power behind what happened here in Ashley, and how the town just seemingly literally fell into the ground. In my interpretation, I'd like to think that they somehow just fell straight into hell or some sort of, I don't know, demonic portal, and from there it just kind of, in lack of a better term, went to hell, you know. I don't really know any areas around me that have disappeared like this. Uh, I know that around where I live, there used to be a school or whatever, and it kind of burnt down to the ground, and there's a lot of history attached to that place, but it kind of reminds me of this because uh, the school was part of a township that no longer exists, but it was nowhere near as catastrophic as what this story just described. But if you live next to any area that just kind of fell off the face of the earth, people say that it was there and it just isn't. Let me know. It'd be interesting to see uh, how each place interprets something like this so much more differently than what the story has. When I ask people what they think of when they hear Texas, I usually get the responses of cowboys, hot summers, and the national treasure that is Buc-ee's. And while all of those are good answers, one that I get more often than not is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas is huge. You could go to a bordering state faster than you could the next major city. Being that the state is enormous, many smaller towns and even smaller cities have spread across the state. I myself live in a small town and I'm surrounded by much smaller towns in any given direction. Along the roads to these towns are abandoned farm buildings, cemeteries of long forgotten souls who were buried long before me, and miles of farmland as far as the eye can see. Among these roads are also homes, nice cottage farmhouses, two-story barn dominiums, and nice homes that were built over half a century ago whose build still holds up to this day. But then you have the out of the way, disheveled, mobile houses and old homes, neglected by their owners and eroded by time and rotted by the harsh Texas sun and weather. It's places like this I'd imagine Leatherface and his folks would call home. A place with nowhere to run and where no one would suspect to look. We all imagine monsters would live far away from prying eyes, able to do what they want without repercussion. But sometimes the best disguise is no disguise. I've been through some of Texas, and there's places where you can't really take your eyes off of the person in front of you while you're pumping gas. I've been to towns that are smaller than the one that I live in, where all the locals seem to know something that I don't. If it's anything like Kotsuwosko, I'd rather not know. The story of Kotsuwosko is that of a small township, about an hour drive from San Antonio. It's stated in the story, looking it up on maps will lead you to nothing but a meat market of the same name and a dance hall. The history of the town is simple. An area settled by Polish immigrants that was used as a trading post for those on their way to San Antonio. In essence, a town of very little significance. Although coincidental, it's stated in the story that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films may have drawn inspiration from what had happened in Kotsuwosko. The similarities lie in the fact that Kotsuwosko has its own band of cannibalistic inbreds. In the story, a man wrecks his car in the town of Poth, about a 15-minute drive from Kotsko. He's taken into the hospital where he dies shortly after, and the extent of his wounds were only one of the many clues that would help identify his killers and torturers. I'm not going to sit here and describe the gruesome wounds in nauseating detail, so I'll go over what's important. His tongue was removed with a rusty instrument, which led to him testing positive for tetanus. His joints also seem to have been broken in a way that could only have been caused by them being bound tightly and for a long time. He had also been forced upon in a non consensual way, which led to a hole being drilled at the end of his spine, which his captors used. He was infected with HIV from the abuse. Another thing of note is that skin had been removed from his extremities. One could only imagine who could have done a thing like this. Thankfully, before the poor soul died, he was able to hand the police a note with the name Kotswosko written on it. It seems the man had escaped from his captors in the town, and somehow he got into a car and managed to drive it. It's unknown who his killers were, but if the note was anything to go off of, they were located in Kotswosko. The police began to investigate the town, only to find the meat market mentioned earlier run by an elderly couple selling pork rinds, who said they knew nothing of the man or the killers. The police would frequently return to the town for more rinds sold at the market and for leads to solve the grisly crime, and each time they would come up with nothing. Until one day, a little girl behind the counter was offered some of the pork rinds by one of the officers on the case, which she refused, stating her mom only lets her have rinds that are made from pigs, and stating even further that her grandpa gets a shipment of quote-unquote skin every month that he flays right off of quote-unquote them as they scream and cry and throws it into a fryer. With a strange comment from the little girl, the pork rinds were sent to be tested in a lab, which were later determined to be in fact not made from pigs. Although during the time of the story they couldn't really tell what it was, that was enough for them to start searching even further. Every subsequent visit to the market was met with a closed sign, and the locals said they never saw or knew an old couple. As the police began to research the elderly couple, they discovered something shocking. Everyone in the town was related. Not a single one of them was unrelated, and any outsider that was once in the town mysteriously disappeared. Upon further investigation, everybody in the town was considered a suspect. The adults were arrested and the children were taken away. During the raids and searches of the homes, bladed instruments with old blood, bone fragments, and teeth were also found. After no connection could be made with the residents/relatives of the town, they were let go, many of which isolated themselves deeper into the countryside. Sometime later, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie was released. Some think one of the residents sold their story, though it all seems to be coincidental. Decades after the horrible occurrence, the town is said to be open for business again, capitalizing off of their storied past. Their dance hall is open once again, and their pork rinds, those damn pork rinds, are said to be some of the best. Okay, so I really enjoyed researching for this creepypasta. So, I know in the story it states that you can't look for this on a map online or whatever, this town of Kotswosko, which is really hard to say. But it's a real town. You know, it's some sort of unofficial community, something like that. Or not unofficial, sorry, unincorporated. Yeah, this town actually exists. It's about an hour drive from San Antonio, and the town of Poth, mentioned in the story, is also real. It's about a 15-minute drive from Kotswosko. Now, with that being said, I don't think that Kotswosko was really the home to a band of cannibalistic inbred people. I don't see anything like that. Its history is really short and pretty much only describes how the town was settled and got electricity. But it's just, I feel like they try to look for the most out of the way town and make up a story about it and just drop something like this on it, which, it could work if not for the fact that if this happened, I'm pretty sure everybody in Texas would be talking about it. But as I was doing research for Kotswosko, I did find an article relating to it from a long time ago, some sort of archival for our newspaper that did take place near a small town in San Antonio, um, where a drifter was murdered. It wasn't just a drifter. Sorry, it was a group of people who were tortured, and one of them was murdered on a Texas ranch. And I'll put it in the description. I don't want to get too into it, but if this story did pique your interest, definitely look into the story. Um, Honestly, I'm surprised this case isn't talked about more. It's actually pretty grisly, if you ask me. Um, and knowing that I live next to a place where something like this happened. I mean, terrible things happen all over the place around here, but something that is, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre ish. It's kind of scary, considering the fact that a lot of the places that I live next to kind of look like Leatherface's house. But yeah, this definitely is a story that kind of hits home again because I live in a place not too far away from the actual Cotswolds go, and there's a lot of crazy people out here, man, and it's not out of the realm of believability that there would be a band of cannibalistic inbreds, as sad as that is to say. But yeah, um, tell me what you think. Tell me if you have a story like this from where you live. I like to hear if you guys have any urban legends like this. For me, doing research into a place like this and seeing articles related to it in this fashion was kind of eye opening. There's a lot of messed up stuff happening around me. But yeah, that was Cotswolds. Being lost is scary. Not being able to recognize your surroundings makes the situation much worse. Usually, you'd get lost in a place you were new to, a place you're still not too familiar with. Maybe the next town over, or even the next state over, or a completely different country. All of those are scary and uncomfortable situations. But what if you got lost on your way home or to work? A path that you've memorized like the back of your hand. Something's off. You've been driving for longer than you usually would. The trees, they don't look right. And the houses, they're not there anymore. You're lost. But how? If you've done this for so long, it's like second nature. But it seems like you've been transported to a completely different world. One that's like yours, but nothing like it at the same time. The horror of being in a place that shouldn't exist is exemplified by the classic Japanese 2chan story of Kisaragi Station. It's one you should be familiar with if you've been on the internet long enough. The story goes that in 2004, a 2chan user who goes by the name Hasumi rode her usual train from work to home when she noticed it was taking longer than usual to get home. What was once a 5 to 7 minute ride was now almost 20. She investigated the conductor's booth only to find curtains blocking the window. Eventually, they stopped at Kisaragi Station, a station not found on any map. As she continues to post and keep the thread updated, she asks those on the thread what to do. Many urge her to stay on the train until the last stop, but against all logic, she gets off only to be met with an empty station on a countryside. As she tries to look for more indicators as to where she is, the train leaves without her. Now she's stuck in the middle of nowhere on a station with nothing but mountains and fields surrounding her. Not a building or person in sight. No taxis, no public phones or anything. She calls her parents, but they don't seem to know where she is. Kisaragi Station doesn't appear on any of the train's maps, and they have absolutely no way of finding her. It's then suggested that she walks back towards where the train came from in order to find another station along the way. She enters the tunnel that the train had come out of. As she walks, she hears the ring of bells, mixed with drums in the distance. As she's walking on the tracks, the apparition of a one-legged man warns her not to walk on them, as it's dangerous, only for moments later, the man to disappear. Somewhere along the trek, she falls and breaks her heel. She's also bleeding now. She's worried she won't make it out alive. But as she wills herself to walk, she makes it to the front of the tunnel. At the other end is a man waiting near the tracks with a car. He offers Hasumi a ride to the next station, and when asked where they were, the man responds with a city named Hina, which Hasumi finds unlikely. The man drives towards the mountain, towards the drums and the distant bells, while muttering to himself. Shortly after Hasumi explains what was going on, she states abruptly that this will be her last post, since her phone is going to die soon. She never updated the thread. So that was Kisaragi Station. It's one of those stories that once you start looking into the more paranormal side of the internet is tossed out there, and in my opinion it's a pretty cut and dry story. I like it. It gets to the point. There's not a lot of overt how should I say scariness to it. It's more or less the unknown that really plays into the whole story. I mean, we've all been there. We drive into a place that just doesn't really seem like we're supposed to be there. Maybe we're out too late, and everything around us seems warped, or we're tired and we don't know where we are, and it gets to you. I've been there. You drive home really late, during the night, and it just seems like you're being swallowed up by the trees, or you swear you took a wrong turn because you don't know where you're at. I've taken cross-country trips, and I mean, just waking up in a different place can be just very, very warping. And I've had situations where I've had to drive home really late at night, or I just take a different path somewhere, and it just doesn't seem like I'm ever going to get there to my destination, and it just kind of wigs you out for a second because you're wondering if you'll ever make it. Sometimes you get highway hypnosis or something like that, and it just makes the trip all the more befuddling, to be honest with you. But that was Kisaragi Station, a place that should not exist. There's actually something more to the story, although it never was updated. About 7 years later, someone who presumably is Hasumi made an update to it. I think the thread was talking about the story. I don't know. I kind of had to translate a lot of it, and I'll read it here word for word, the translator one. So it's a rough translation because it's coming out of Japanese, and I don't know much Japanese to translate it fully, so I'm just gonna try my best here. And it says this: I don't think you believe it. After 7 years, I am now back in the normal world. There are various things after returning. How Ken was not able to answer because some people have me to worry about something. Anauto, the driver, was stopped the car, so I'm guessing Anauto is the driver, in the dark forest, and I saw the light over there. I didn't understand the driver's, I don't know what that says, I don't know. But I was very scared when a man walked out from the right side. At that moment, there was a light and a shock to the car. The driver was gone. The man said, "Why here? Iterator here is useless." Now the driver, I ran away from, I don't know. I guess I was really panicked atmosphere. The man was told me to take out of the car and walk towards the light. To be honest, I didn't know what it was, so I ran while crying. Soon it became bright and I opened the eyes. In front of the nearest station, parents had called me for the car. At that time, it was April 2011. The 7 years in between have disappeared. Parents, everything as well. If there was no went home to me. Thanks, guys. Thanks to I was able to run home. Everybody should be careful. Okay, so I kind of read that as best as I could. Very broken English, but from what I can interpret, um, was that somewhere along the drive they stopped in a forest where there was just a big flash of light, and some guy came out, told her to get out, hurry up, and run for the light. The driver was gone or whatever, um, and she did, and she just appeared, on a station, um, and her parents were there. So I don't want to say that it was literally she spent 7 years there. Um, Maybe it took her 7 years to recount it, and the story just somehow didn't really convey that. But if this is assuming, and the story is, that's even a little bit true, I'm kind of happy for her to get back home because, hell, if I was stuck walking the same place over and over again for 7 years, I'd go crazy. I'm sure a lot of people would also. But yeah, that was Kisaragi Station. Again, a place that shouldn't exist. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's that's another beast conquered. I finally finished this video after a while. I've been working on it. I had the script written for a long time, and um, having it done and having all the gameplay and stuff ready to go. I decided to just go ahead and finish it. It's one of my longest videos so far, so I hope people really do stick with it. Even if you don't really listen to the video, you just throw it on in the background or whatever. It really means a lot. But yeah, I'm really happy that I finally got this video out of the way. Yeah, I mean, if you like the video, throw me a like or whatever. You don't have to. Don't feel inclined to. But yeah, I'm really happy this is finally over. And if you have anything to correlate with the story, maybe a story of your own, make sure to comment it. I want to hear it. It'd be really interesting to hear your guys' story. I always appreciate to hear other people's folklore. It's honestly very eye opening. But yeah, thank you for watching. It means a lot.
Hello, my son. Welcome to heaven.